Every saint has a past and every sinner a future. Yes, it's absolutely true that I went to prison. You're welcome to look it all up if you wish. My real name is Christopher Allen Boden. That's Bravo Oscar Delta Echo November, and my reg number is 33550509. I served time in 2 different federal prisons. On one sentence, the first prison was shut down and was released on 1 August 2023. I am absolutely guilty of every single thing they said I did. Nothing was rigged, the judge was fair and admirable, and the system worked. I'm a hardcore super criminal science gangster. But you want the story. Yeah, I read the comments. At the end of the day, every single person doing time is only there for 1 of 2 reasons. Either they hurt people or they piss people off. I never hurt anyone, but wow, did I piss off the wrong people. The entire detailed story will fill a book someday. I have a habit of writing them from time to time. Did you know that I write books too? Do you read? Do you have thumbs? But I'll give you the basic facts and encourage you to draw your own opinions from there. A lot of guys do prison time and try to monetize that, doing speaking tours to high school kids or writing self-help books and all that foolishness. They want to be famous for doing time. I don't. These guys are just dudes that are working yet another prison hustle. I'm not going to be on here shilling $5,000 classes telling you what you're going to learn in your first week of A&O. The guys selling those $5,000 classes just don't. I've met a couple of them. We even had one on tour through our prison. They're shitballs, preying on your fears, and I find them unconscionable. These guys have the same mojo as psychics that prey on the grieving. They're both telling you what you want to hear in your time of desperation so that they can take your money and not actually deliver on their promises. Gotta give them credit though. They got a captive audience! Prison is just a thing that happened to me. I did my crime, I did my time, and that's that. It doesn't make me cool or a badass, but it does give me a hood pass and an invite to the cookout. It's just a thing. But at the same time, I've never lied about it, and I'm not going to start now. If people ask, and rather a lot of you have, I'll talk about it and answer questions to the best of my abilities, but there's a balance. There's parts of my prison experience that I'm not going to talk about. There's things that I've seen that you either don't need to know about or don't want to know about. I'm not interested in giving you nightmare fuel, and as a Gen Xer, I don't want to talk about my fucking feelings! With the exception of the DMV, prison isn't like the free world. It's a radical level of culture shock beyond anything you'll ever comprehend. I pray that none of you ever begin to grasp what life is like in a cell. I'll tell you this, it's nothing like in the movies. The food is worse than you think, medical care is non-existent, and the simple truth is that nobody's going to give a shit about you once you're inside. The world, from your perspective, just stops, but for everyone else, it just keeps trucking on. That simple fact is more soul-crushing than you think. My crime was all related to Bitcoin. I'm a nerd, and about 5 minutes after I was taught about Bitcoin, I was answering questions about it for other people. That quickly became teaching a regular weekly class on it. All of this was highly public. I literally had a 4-foot diameter bright yellow Bitcoin logo on the front window, and the class was really successful. Hundreds of people paid 20 or 30 bucks to come take the class. They each got their own Bitcoin wallet and typically about 10 bucks in Bitcoin to get them started with. Super simple. This happened outside the class as well. I'm always meeting new people at events and such. I'd answer questions and set them up with a phone wallet and give them 5 bucks in Bitcoin just to introduce them to the technology. I did this for easily 100 people a year. Just, hey, check out this cool thing. It's awesome and it could change the world. I was the Johnny Appleseed of the digital domain, planting Satoshis wherever I could. A lot of people who took the class and their friends, family, came in and bought a few bucks in Bitcoin. They'd come in and get anywhere from 5 to 100 bucks at a time. This grew in popularity over months and more people came in. 99% of them all bought small amounts. These are normal people like you and me. Nobody comes to my dumbass for wealth management advice. I don't have any of either. The largest amount I typically sold was a few $100. We made a rate book, a 3-ring binder with a chart to work out what percentage to take, because there's a tiny cost in doing the transaction and we wanted to keep it fair and transparent to everyone involved. The chart stopped at $1,000, because who the hell is going to buy more than that? People walked in, paid cash, and left with their Bitcoin. No paperwork, and we made a small percentage on the transaction. The Bitcoin was all mine personally. We never used any of the company's money in anything. It was just a way of getting people into learning about and using Bitcoin. Let me make that point abundantly clear. At no point ever did I use company money for anything personal or having to do with Bitcoin or crypto in any way. Despite what a ton of people like to infer in the press and the online comments, it was only ever my own money that I touched. Most days we didn't lose money, but with the volatility of Bitcoin's price, it was 6 to 5 and pick 'em if we made more than we lost as things changed throughout the day. I didn't have the luxury of holding and riding it out. I was playing with small amounts. I started with only $5 of my own money, traded that to a friend for Bitcoin, and sold that piece by piece. That same $5 cycled around and around over and over between us. Every time he took his percentage and I took mine. Aside from his 3%, my 5%, and the usual bit for taxes, all the rest of the profits went into supporting the Science Center. That was the point of it all. I'd spent my entire adult life building a school, and we finally found a way we could do fundraising without having to beg for money. That simple fact was my only win with crypto, that I'd found a way to work my ass off and raise money for my school. It beat the hell out of sending out thousands of grant proposals a year. This empowered me with the ability to pay the bills on my own, and that was a huge deal. Every time I'd sold all the Bitcoin I'd had, we'd deposit the cash in a bank, send it to my buddy, and he'd send me the Bitcoin. Sometimes it took a week to sell out. Some days we did it before lunch. Nothing was ever hidden. We didn't have dudes driving across the country with suitcases full of cash. We just both had accounts in the same brand of bank, and everything was easily traceable and accountable, and it was simple. We didn't have any idea how much we didn't know. We had no idea we were committing any manner of crime. Nothing was hidden. We paid the taxes, bought it from a public exchange. There was nothing sketchy about any of this. I wasn't hiding in a back alley somewhere. I was making very public posts, broadcasting it to thousands of people every other day on my Facebook. This wasn't subtle. The only time we had problems was doing the deposits in an ATM, which happened a lot because banks aren't open nearly the amount of hours in a day that we were. Because ATMs won't take a ton of small bills. Most stop after like 30. So you gotta break it up into a few transactions. And if you're standing there with a pile of 10s and 20s, it adds up fast. $1,000 in 20s is 50 pieces of paper. During all of these transactions, I just treated it like selling anything else. A person hands me some cash, I hand them a thing. It didn't matter to me if it was a stepper motor, an old server, or some Bitcoin. Bitcoin keeps highly detailed ledgers of all the transactions. That's the point of a blockchain. It's a trustless system. I didn't need to know their name, address, and social security number. I'm not a bank. I'm a turbo nerd trying to teach people about science and technology. We figured if we ever did anything wrong, a couple guys in suits would show up, show us a badge, tell us that we're idiots, and we'd fix it and go on with our day. That's exactly what happened when we got to meet the FCC. Someone had given us a pile of cheap Chinese radios and they weren't kosher on American airwaves. We got to meet a cool government nerd. FCC guys are awesome. We got to hang out and see his epic portable rig. We fixed our radio problem and that was that. Because that's how the government is supposed to work. Logic, reason, and common sense. Critical thinking from responsible adults who can be trusted with authority. The problem is, I had the exact level of street smarts that you'd expect from a hick kid science nerd. And Bitcoin is blood in the water for scammers, stoners, and thieves. But I didn't care. I'm raising money to do something tangible and universally positive with it. And if I have to deal with some shitty people to get there, that's just part of dealing with the public. Hell, you should see the comments I delete on here. The public, by and large, contains a non-trivial percentage of deplorable examples of humanity. Ask anyone who's ever worked retail. I was in no way prepared to handle being conned. A guy came in over months and spun me hard enough to get me to loan him some Bitcoin. And I agreed to it. I really didn't want to do it, but he's good. One of my team made it possible for me to feel safe enough to do it. My guy's a solid dude and used to be a finance guy for a car dealership, so he knew how to do all the paperwork to cover my ass. Scammer dude and I settled on an interest rate just shy of the legal limit of usury, and I loaned him some Bitcoin from what I had saved up in the fervent hope that when he paid it back, it would clear our bills for an entire month. This happened over and over again, sometimes small amounts, sometimes rather large by my standards. Eventually, we're talking about serious money here. With the interest, we're talking about very serious money here, like paying off the mortgage money. And poof, he's in the wind, because he totally didn't see that coming. But at least I had a whole pile of paperwork on him. A couple months later, I called the police, then the state police, and then the FBI, and nobody was interested in helping me at all. So I called the local debt collection agency. They said that for 30% of what they can get, they're happy to make his life as miserable as I want. I signed the papers, and off they went to do what lawyers do best. But now I was out what I had loaned him, and I really needed that to pay the bills. So let's see how much more Bitcoin I can sell as fast as possible. So I did. More classes, more live speaking events, everything I could do to try and raise some money. You want me at your event to talk on stage about Bitcoin? I'm there. I said yes to every venue and event that called. And with Bitcoin on the news every day, they called. I even did segments for the local news. And one day a well-heeled gentleman walks in and wants to buy a lot of Bitcoin. $15,000 in one go. What? Stop laughing. In my world, that's a hell of a lot of money. The problem is, I didn't have 15 grand. Have we met? I got way too much debt to just be sitting on 15 grand. I'd have to borrow it, so I called my Bitcoin buddy. He sent it, and the next day, I was ready. He was mildly sketchy, but he didn't ask and I didn't tell. Money changed hands, and I went on with my day. A couple weeks later, he wants to do it again. My buddy was fine with it because he got paid back already, and he got his percentage as well. All I'm thinking is how awesome it's going to be to pay the mortgage on time this month. So when the dude came back and told me he was a coke dealer, I didn't bat an eye. I made sure he didn't want to trade me cocaine for Bitcoin. I made sure he didn't want to bring drugs onto the property. I made sure I wouldn't have to touch drugs in any way. But that was it. I didn't care how he makes his money. That's not my world. I'm not a drug guy. I don't know anything about that culture. I cared about how I can use it to pay the mortgage and keep the lights on. Besides, I'd never met a coke dealer before. I'm a nerd from farm country. I got questions. And high on my list of questions is, hey, you guys know a fair bit about debt collecting, right? I offered him the same deal I'd offered our debt collector, 30% of anything he can get out of that scumbag con artist. And that's when he asked me the most important question of my life. You want me to kill him? I said no. Beat the hell out of him if you need, sure, but don't kill him, because I didn't care about revenge. I cared about getting the money we need to pay the bills. The Science Center was my entire life. That's what motivated me. I'm not above revenge, but killing people isn't how you do that. Don't go thinking I'm some altruistic saint. I wouldn't piss on this guy if he was on fire, but I didn't want him killed. I wanted what he owed me. Fair and square, no more, no less. And that was my third federal offense since we started this story. Less than a minute after he walked out of the room, I handed 5 of that 15 grand directly to Moose, and she ran to the bank to pay the mortgage payment on time for the first time in a while. Moments later, we were raided by no less than 4 different agencies of the United States federal government. Over 50 agents with guns, dogs, and they even parked some armored personnel carrier kind of thing in my back lot. We had local cops, the state cops, Homeland, FBI, the Secret Service, and not just the IRS, but the special spicy flavor, the IRS CID. And wow, were they all pissed off when they found out that in 10 minutes, we'd already spent a third of the money. That went over like a fart in church. The feds ate me alive, and the news crews gnawed on the remains. The details didn't matter, context didn't matter, the truth didn't matter. They put federal raid, Bitcoin, money laundering, my name and the company name in the headline, and nobody reads past that. Half the world still thinks I was stealing money from people and defrauding our donors or some stupid shit like that. They took every computer in the building, my office, my laptop, my cell phone, and all the computers in the front office. Everything. They even cleaned out the archives and video production, taking every single second of footage on every hard drive we had. Boxes of hard drives. They seized all the Bitcoin I had, a tiny fraction of a single coin. They thought I had millions locked away in a bunker. I had crumbs. We were out of business instantly. How are we going to run a science center without computers and cell phones? It didn't really matter because within 48 hours, every foundation and sponsor we had vanished. Thanks to the headlines, I was burned for life. I'll never work in the nonprofit world ever again. Everyone just assumed I was pocketing and playing with donated funds. We were out of business, and that defaulted our mortgage. The bank gleefully seized the building. We had offers on it at $1.3 million. It was a city block at downtown. We could have easily sold it, cleared the debt, given the staff a small but meaningful severance, and walked away with zero. But instead, the bank took it from us in a courtroom where we weren't even allowed to speak. They sold it to one of their developer friends for less than we owed on it. We were kicked out, and realized I lived there. I lived in an old mechanical room up in the attic that I'd turned into a tiny apartment. They tore the building down and built overpriced apartments. They hung a big sign on the end of the building, facing up the street, right as you drive into the city. I swear to God, it says victory. I'm not kidding. You can see it if you drive by today. And then, nothing. For 2 years, nothing. They never called me in. I was never arrested, interviewed, interrogated, put in holding, nothing. For 2 years. The only sign of activity after the raid was I got emails from Google, Facebook, and everything else I had an account on that the government had seized my entire online existence. They didn't just seize my bank account, they seized everyone's bank account. People on our board, none of whom had anything to do with this at all. The government didn't care. They entered over 180,000 pages of evidence against me. 180,000. Because they didn't just download my Google and Facebook, spend 2 years parsing it all in intricate detail, and then just submit the relevant bits. No, they entered all of it, because that obscured everything and made it useless for us to use in our defense. You can't fight what you can't see. The good side is that even after having a federally funded double-fisted colonoscopy by a rabid ADA and half a dozen branches of the justice system, all they had on me was that I sold Bitcoin, twice, to one of their own agents. I'm weird, I'm dumb as hell, I'm a walking, talking, swearing, screaming, neurospicy freak show with a leaky social filter and weaponized autism. But despite years of their concerted efforts, not really much of a criminal. But it was 2018 and Bitcoin. They had just spent millions of tax dollars trying to bring down what they believed was the criminal kingpin of Midwest crypto. They were sure as hell going to make an example out of somebody, so the dangerously enthusiastic, young and fresh ADA decided he was going to make a name for himself, and prosecuted me under no less than RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. RICO is a federal law entirely designed to take down organized crime, like actual mob bosses and such. RICO substantially enhances existing criminal punishments and creates all new causes of action for acts done as part of an organized criminal enterprise. This means they could really nail me to the wall and have a ton of extra things they could turn from being legal to illegal because it happened in the process of breaking another law. Think of it like this. It's totally legal for you to have a set of lockpicks in your EDC bag, but if you get caught breaking into a house, well, now you're in possession of burglary tools as well, and that's a separate offense. They can probably add on that it was premeditated, and did you have a couple friends with you? Well, now it's a conspiracy. Half the people I met in federal prison had a conspiracy charge. That one's easy to get. Whose idea was it? Was it yours? Now you got leadership points. The hits just keep on coming. There's a lot of laws that work like this, because if they can charge you with 50 different things, they can always get a few of them to stick. And that's all it takes to take all your money, all your assets, and land you in prison. This isn't just RICO. They don't flex that big gun on most people, but they did on me. There is one good side to that though. Silver lining, if you will. By prosecuting me under RICO, the federal government officially classified me as a gangster. Fucking science gangster! So, you know, that's pretty cool. The federal government actually pedigreed me as a gangster the moment they prosecuted me under RICO. They also gave me leadership points, which sucks in sentencing, but in prison is a great thing to have, because it's a nice little diploma that means you didn't rat anybody out. Gangster with leadership points. The government gave me the gold star of a bad motherfucker who knows how to keep his mouth shut. I was sentenced to 30 months in federal prison, and the BOP sent me to the armpit of Wisconsin, FCI Oxford. I could, and probably will, write a whole book about Oxford. It's a shithole. It was built in the 70s as a medium security state prison for children. Yeah, you heard that right. Wisconsin built a state prison, guard towers, giant fences, the whole nine, specifically for children, and it's designed to hold over 1,000 people. Meditate on that a moment. The feds came in, bought it, changed a couple things around, and turned it into a medium with a satellite camp and a big training center. Back in the late 80s, it was a club fed for all the white-collar guys out of Chicago. It was a retirement home for mafia dudes and crooked politicians, but that was before mandatory minimums filled it to overflowing with the drug guys. There are certainly exceptions, but the vast majority of time you can tell what a guy's in for just by looking at his face. Over 50% of the people in the BOP right now are in for drugs. If they're white, it's meth, black, it's crack, and Mexicans do coke. This doesn't hold true for everyone, but you'll win more than you lose. When I was there, you could count the white-collar guys on your fingers. It's all drugs now. And I'm not talking about your street corner guys selling underweight eights and box out of their pockets. I'm talking about bricklayers moving keys by the truck. These are not people you want to meet. Nobody goes to Oxford on scholarship. To make things even more fun, I got to experience prison during a pandemic. If you thought COVID made things suck out here in the free world, prison was 1,000,000 times worse. While the free world was social distancing, we were packing 2-man cells, 4 guys deep. 140 square feet with 4 dudes living in there. I had COVID twice while in prison. Everyone was sick. More than a few didn't get better. The vast majority of the staff is overwhelmingly anti-vax, many of them quite vocally so. We saw one drunken piece of shit CO rage quit over it. Oxford was falling apart so bad that we'd lose heat, power, water, and phones on a regular basis. I sat in the chow hall when it was in the 30s and we could see our breath over breakfast, and the fire sprinkler pipes exploded over people's racks while they were sleeping in them. We had showers that were covered in 5 flavors of fungus, toilets that were ripped off the wall with just holes where they should be, and easily half the sinks didn't work at all. Most of the time the water worked. We only had a few times where we'd lost it for more than a couple days straight. We had 4 phones for 100 guys. At no point during my stay did all 4 phones work at the same time. The fire alarms went off all the time, day and night, and nobody cared. It's not like we're going outside if the alarms go off. That never happened unless we were having an actual fire drill. When the alarms go off, we stay in our cells. It was ungodly hot in the summer. The walls and floor would sweat as much as the inmates. The building had AC. There's a massive AC unit just outside the door to the yard. But it broke at some point in the 90s and has sat idle since. There's plenty of AC in all the staff offices though, so they don't care. I was there when they ran out of food. That was fun. I've eaten my share of box nasty, and any inmate is a master of ramen and minute rice. I want to see B. Dylan Hollis do an episode on Nutriloaf. I was there when the power went out, which is super fun in a prison environment because that's just a lockdown with a twist. I was there when they gave all the high security USP guys at Leavenworth management variables so they could put them on the yard at Oxford. We went from a dropout yard to a politically active yard in about half an hour. Between check-ins and fights, the shoe was packed completely full from that point on as the sharks fed on the minnows. They couldn't bust the chomos out fast enough. I was there the night they had so few staff left that they let an entire unit go all night long without any COs stationed in it. They locked the doors and just wandered over to do counts. Oxford is dangerously understaffed and has been for years. They can't get new hires to stick around because it's such a shitty job in a shitty location. Everyone gets mandated, and the union leadership is everything you've come to expect from American politics. They treat the staff there slightly better than they treat the inmates, but not by much. Look up the online chart of job satisfaction ranking for all the various departments of the US government. There's hundreds of them. Guess which one is dead last? Look up the divorce and alcoholism rates for federal corrections officers. It's sobering. I was there when things got so bad that Regional came in, hauled the warden out, and shut the place down. They put us all on buses in the middle of the night and sent us to the winds. Dudes went to Duluth, Terre Haute, outer region to Pennsylvania. One guy pissed everyone off so bad they sent his annoying ass all the way to Big Sandy. I went with 18 guys to the shiny new AUSP Thompson, Illinois. It's the melon capital of the world, where I finished out my sentence. Aside from the Legionella, Thompson was nothing compared to Oxford. Do a little digging into news articles about Thompson and you'll have a fun ride. Now, knowing all that, I still say Thompson was better than Oxford. I spent my prison time mainly working in education, teaching guys how to read and helping them get their GEDs. Oxford really didn't want me working in education. They wouldn't give me the job. So I took a gig in the motor pool and spent hundreds of dollars of my own money to get the up-to-date version of the exact GED course they used. Their books are years out of date, so I bought it myself and had it mailed in, one book at a time. I taught language arts, science, social studies, and math. Every day, one-on-one, in every quiet place I could find. Sometimes it was my cell, sometimes out on the yard, in the library, over chow, walking on the track, everywhere I could find enough quiet to work with someone. It's embarrassing to people when they can't read, but privacy is a thing that just doesn't exist in prison. In fact, you learn pretty fast that if you're alone, you're probably about to have one hell of a bad day. There is no alone in prison, just lonely. So half my job in education was just trying to find a place we could sit and talk without some asshole making fun of my student. Because that's going to end with both of them going to the SHU, and there goes class for 2 months. If you get your GED in prison, it drops your pattern score. Lots of guys are first-time nonviolent drug offenders that are mainly in prison for being black and desperate at the same time. They've got low points, and that GED can mean the difference between a cell or a halfway house. I literally broke people out of prison with a pencil. Eventually, the COs noticed, and I was given a job in the education department. I still used my own materials, but it was nice to have it official, and I got a giant pay spike with it. I made 12 cents an hour, which, including my job at the Geek Group, is the highest I've ever been paid working in academia. A dear friend of mine sent in the entire training course and materials for helping people with dyslexia learn how to read and write. They saw me working with that, and as a result, Oxford actually got the set themselves. This is now being used throughout the BOP to help a ton of guys, and I am sincerely proud of that. And every one of my fellow inmates and students who ever sees this, I'm proud of you. You worked your ass off to get here. Don't fuck it up. I want to talk to you at the cookout, not 5 cents a minute on TrueLinks. I didn't just teach classes, I took every class they give me. I took parenting classes, and not only don't I have any kids, I had a vasectomy 20 years ago. I took finance classes, and I never want to touch money ever again. But they're giving credit for it, so I took it. Thanks to working my ass off, I earned my First Step Act credits, my Second Chance Act credits, and my good time, and got out as fast as I could and onto home confinement. On the morning of August 1st, 2023, I stepped out of Thompson and into free air for the first time in a long time. I'm still on paper, supervised release, which is like probation with teeth. I'm not on parole. Anyone talking about parole in the federal system is either very old or lying to you. Parole hasn't existed in the federal system since the Bengals were teaching you how to walk like an Egyptian. In the end, I've been convicted of operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. That was selling Bitcoin and not making people give me their personally identifying information. Oh! That's a federal offense. It violates the know your customer rules, and that really pisses people off. I think people should actually be way more pissed about the government tracking every penny you earn, save, or spend. But what do I know? I'm just an idiot convict. Structuring. That's when we made deposits in the ATM, because we had to do it in multiple transactions. By the way, if you ever sold a car or something, went to the bank to deposit it, and the teller says anything like, yeah, don't do that big transaction because it's just a bunch of extra paperwork. Do it as a couple smaller ones instead and save us all the headache. That's a federal offense. And money laundering. Because if you sell Bitcoin to some random dude, that's fine. But if he tells you he's a coke dealer, that's money laundering. That's a big federal offense. I am absolutely 100% guilty of every single crime they convicted me of. And that's what you'll read in the papers. Here's what you won't ever see though. Out of all that Bitcoin I sold, sure, some people got high with it. We had a handful of guys who would come in smelling like they'd just spent an hour in a bong water jacuzzi and buy exactly $82 in Bitcoin. We were pretty sure they weren't investing in their long-term future, but the majority of people who bought it were just average nerds with an interest in the tech and a hope for the future. There's certainly some bad people in the crypto world, but there's bad people everywhere. Shit happens, wear a hat. A lot of the people who were buying my Bitcoin were doing it to set aside money for kids and grandkids to go to college. we focused a huge amount of marketing and networking around what we called the Grandpa Brigade. That all began with one retired dentist and grew to be a whole group of awesome old farts who bought Bitcoin to turn into tuition for their grandkids. Remember, this is all happening in 2017. You could buy a whole coin for $2,000. Guess what happened with all that Bitcoin I sold? It's worth rather a lot more these days. I couldn't save the company, I never made a dime, but there's a hell of a lot of kids that'll get to go to college because of what I did. Worth it! I started the Geek Group in June of '94. It was my entire adult life's work. We got raided on December 21st, 2018, and the company went out of business within a week because of it. The government didn't shut the company down, but the news coverage they coordinated of a raid made every single sponsor, foundation, and donor just vanish overnight. When they say money laundering and nonprofit in the same headline, nobody ever reads past the name of the company. You're done, you're burned. I'll never work in the nonprofit sector or academia ever again. I never hurt anyone, or stole from anyone, or cheated or scammed anyone. I was very publicly selling Bitcoin at 10%, while the Bitcoin ATM guys were doing it 40 and 50%. It wasn't a scam or a scheme, it was just a nerdy class on the basics of blockchain and me selling Bitcoin to anyone who walked in the door. So by all means, dig deep and do your own research. Ask questions and demand evidence. Critical thinking works, and I certainly encourage you to flex your brains and find the truth. There's a lot of things written about me all over the internet. Some of it was written by the government, spin in their direction to try and look like the superheroes they wanted to be for taking down the massive Bitcoin science gangster of Leonard Street, but most of it's written by a handful of old employees that I fired for theft and mutiny. They all banded together and made a bunch of different accounts in a bunch of different places that all have different names, but they all have the same misspellings and verbiage. It's a small group of really angry people out there who decided to get as loud as possible and make a hobby out of making my life miserable. We call them the haters. I'm sure you'll see them around from time to time. And they're not entirely wrong either. While they're trying to spin a lot and they're saying a non-trivial amount of outright bullshit, some of what they say is actually true. I'm not going to try and fight it one way or another. I've had a staggering amount of time to sit and think and reflect. And I have no interest in wasting what's left of my life with the haters, because I just don't give a shit anymore. If you personally take umbrage with something I should be called to task for, I'm happy to discuss it and answer actual questions from someone who stands up and has a real name. But I'm not going to endlessly debate every stupid thing I've done in my entire life against faceless trolls online. Either way, take comfort in the fact that after a ride through the US government's penile system, I've paid for every sin I've ever committed and a hell of a lot I didn't. I'm square with God, government, and everyone in between. I just don't have time for all that useless drama. Just note that the government spent millions of dollars in well over 2 years going through my entire life under a microscope. If even a tenth of what the haters say was actually true, I'd be an AdMax over in Florence, Colorado, not out here making stupid videos about things that most people don't care about. I did it! I screwed up. I messed with things I didn't understand and learned some painful lessons in the process. It cost me everything I owned. My apartment, my company, staff, 25 years of my life's work, and a bid in federal prison. It also ended up putting my friends and family through hell. My rack at Oxford was a lower, and one day I took a Sharpie and scrawled something up on the frame on the bottom of the upper rack, because that was the first thing I saw every morning laying there. Just 3 words, black on gray. It gets better. Thanks to selling off the first 95% of everything I owned, I'm now only about $250,000 in debt. Every time one of you guys buys a sticker or a t-shirt, I get a tiny step closer to that number getting down to 0. Within 2 weeks of the group shutting down, I was given a dozen serious job offers, but one of them really stood out. I've got an amazing friend. You know him as Bootsy. He'd been a member of the group, and I got to go shoot a couple videos at his plant. He offered me a job, and I said yes. It wasn't the best paying offer, not by a long shot, but it let me shoot video and teach, and it's a rock and roll kind of environment, as far away from crowds in the city as I could get. I wanted a rock to crawl under. And this rock came with fun problems to solve and great people to work with. I worked there for 2 years between the raid and my sentencing. After I went in, they missed me so much that I got promoted. Twice. Before I even got out of prison. I still work there today and plan to until this YouTube thing grows enough that I can make it a full-time job. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I think I can do well at this, and I'm working like hell to do better. It seems to be working. I'm not saying you should trust me. Hell no. I'm a science gangster. I'm not here to be a role model. And don't ever ask me anything about Bitcoin, because clearly I don't know shit. I'm the only guy you're ever gonna meet who went to federal prison for money laundering and operating an illegal bank that drives a 20-year-old used hatchback. I am not a useful source of knowledge for such things, and I certainly don't know how to criminal very well. Every one of these videos has mistakes in it. I've made almost 3,000 episodes on here, and not a single one of them is perfect. Because I'm not perfect. I'm just another asshole like anyone else. But I can write, I can teach, and I can give you a laugh while doing it. and that's all I got. But it's a start. It gets better. I came back to YouTube on the 4th of February 2024 after not making a video for 2 years. I had 24,931 subs on a channel that had been here since 2008. I threw myself into making the videos that I wanted to make because now there's no company to worry about. There's no sponsors, no crew, no lab, no giant team of people. It's just me and a couple friends that help out from time to time. If you've never been to the bottom, you don't know which way is up. I changed everything, and it took a while to find my voice, but I got there. After spending a year and a half learning how to be invisible and stay out of the way, it took me a minute to be comfortable on camera again. That was a lot harder than I thought it would be. But here I am. It gets better. If you watch through the shorts in chronological order, you can actually see me finding my voice, learning how to edit, developing my skills from working with a teleprompter, all that jazz. My writing has gotten worlds better, and I'm actually making videos that I feel are worth watching. I'm sure that there will be problems and drama from time to time, but I'll do my best to keep that out of here. This is a place for learning and teaching science and engineering. Sure, I've got opinions, big ones, about lots of things, but this isn't the venue for that. I'm not going Wrangler star on you guys. I'm listening. I read every single comment, and you seem to want me to keep doing this. A precious few of you even want to help me succeed. But I still have a long way to go to prove myself. A lot of it happens in the things you don't see. You don't see me on here begging people to like, share, and subscribe. I'm not going to tell you that this video has got to be worthy of a like and share, because I'm not here to tell you what to do. Make your own damn choices. Live your life. If you want to be a part of this and associate yourself with a weirdo science super freak, go nuts. If you don't, I understand. Going to prison is one hell of a filter for finding out who your real friends are, but it gets better. You also won't see me on here begging for donations. Fuck that. I'll work for it. If you like what I do and you want to support me, there's lots of ways to do it. With the exception of the t-shirts, every single product you see in my store is actually made in my basement. I don't do it all myself. My roommates help. But every sticker, magnet, mug, all that stuff is actually made by us. I design all the stuff and we make it together. The shirts are printed by a different company, but I design all those too. That's why if you order stickers and a shirt, they come in 2 different packages. We don't ship the shirts. If you want to actually do the stupid thing of kicking in a couple bucks to someone who has literally served time in a federal prison for money laundering and operating an illegal bank, well, the link to my Ko-Fi is in the description on this video. It's on my main channel description as well. Do I appreciate the hell out of your support? Of course. But I don't have the right to stand up here and beg for it. I have no credibility. How do you know I won't be spending it on liquor, loose women, and jazz? I'm a hardcore criminal, damn it! A weapon of mass instruction. My goal in life is to make this a full-time job. I want to build a workshop that's big enough to do high voltage work in and small enough to afford. I want to build a team, starting with apprentices who have a sincere and passionate desire to learn, and have a hell of a lot of fun making cool shit and putting it on the internet. I want to educate, inspire, and entertain. It's a big mountain to climb, and I've got a raging case of Sisyphus. I've fallen from president to prisoner, and I'm starting from scratch. But I've been at the bottom before, and I can handle this. It's hard, but not impossible. I've survived prison and the nonprofit sector. I know firsthand, if you gotta eat shit, don't nibble. But I can't do it alone. It's important to remember that leadership is a gift given by those that choose to follow. You are the most important part of all of this. I will never begin to have the words to express how unendingly, passionately, relentlessly thankful I am for your time, attention, and support. I will never have the emotional wherewithal and communication skills to show you just how much your energy, your support, and your help actually means to me. But you can bet your ass I'll die trying. I know what it's like to be completely alone, isolated, sick, beaten, and broken down to the very core of a man's being. I know what it is to take a beating so bad you piss blood for 3 days. I've been there. I lived that. I survived. And I did it without getting bitter, without giving up on life, without holding on to all that anger and rage and hate. I'm a genuinely happy person. That's harder to hold on to than you can imagine. The fact that I have the freedom and ability to make a video talking about science, engineering, and job skills, and there's 1,000 people who want to watch in the first 10 minutes, I can't express the energy I get from that. It's what gets me through the hours of writing and editing. I know I can do this because you're telling me I can. And so long as you keep doing your part, that gives me the ability to do mine. This isn't like the one-way street of television. This is a partnership. You're not stuck just being viewers. You get to choose what you watch, when, and for how long. You get to comment and interact with my life in tangible, meaningful ways. I actually have to work to earn and maintain your attention. Because of that, your attention means a lot more to me. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being a part of my life and the tangible manifestation of my dream. Thank you for giving me a chance. Every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. And I beg of you, please never forget, it gets better, and that's pretty cool.